Yep.
Hello everyone, I'm Ijin. I'll be your moderator for our third FriDates session this month entitled Parlimen Digital and Youth Leadership. With me here today is a very young and passionate advocate, Qyira Yusri. And a little brief introduction about Qyira. Qyira is the co-founder and education director of Undi 18. Undi 18 is a Malaysian grassroots movement spearheaded by a group of young people that successfully lobbied the government and Parliament of Malaysia to take steps towards amending Article 119, Part 1 of the Federal Constitution to reduce the minimum voting age in Malaysia from 21 to 18 years old. With Undi 18, she leads the voter education initiatives by creating workshop modules and creative content to ensure that by the 15th general election, Malaysian youth are prepared to vote. Now, Qyira did a double major in communications and gender studies, which we just discussed just now, at Western Michigan University, and worked with Teach for Malaysia and Closing the Gap prior to running her own NGO. She has worked in creating and running youth organizations focusing on nation building, advocacy, and policy. She was also part of the organizing team for Parlimen Digital last July. So if you have any questions for her later on, do drop them in the comment section below and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So Qyira, this was the first ever youth-led parliament session in Malaysia. What inspired
World.
the hosting? Oh, okay, in the
Yes.
world.
Well,
So
yeah.
yeah, tell us more about Parliament Digital and what inspired the hosting of it.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure. Ijin, you were a participant of the program as well. What kawasan do you represent?
I'm actually from Malacca, so I represented the ICRO,
ICRO.
the Hang Tuah Jaya, Hang Tuah Jaya.
Oh, okay, okay.
The area is called Hang Tuah Jaya.
Yeah. So Parlimen Digital really came about when a bunch of us who are all friends we were talking about the recent at that time the Parliament sitting that wasn't really a sitting. It was mainly the Agong speech only, and there was no one was debating. There were no bills being passed. It was very just ceremonial. And one of the reasons why they said that they couldn't do a parliamentary sitting is because of COVID, and they said that it's too dangerous to sort of like have everyone mingle and like I don't know, somehow the germs can fly around and things like that. But we realized that there's so many governments around the world that have started and that have executed parliament sittings on their own, whether it's in a hybrid version where
Mhm.
only a small number is in the physical hall and the rest of them
Oh.
are online, or it's done entirely online. So there are case studies that have proven to be successful because when it comes to a country like ours, where it's a democracy, when you want to pass bills, and this includes like budgetary bills, when we got the BPN and all that in the beginning, it's a huge expenditure by the government. And in
Mm,
a healthy democracy, you should have sort of like check and balance, right? You should have
mm,
everyone arguing, not to say maybe like don't give the money, but maybe
yeah.
at least give people the chance to say, oh, maybe should we give more to education, should we give
Mm,
more to the mothers, right? These are kind of the discussion that you need to have before you give money to everyone.
mm,
So I think a bunch of us who were, all of us who were youth, 30 years old and below, we were just talking, and we just like, it can't be that hard to do a video call with 200
yeah.
people, kan? But it's actually quite hard lah. Right? But and then we realized that actually, what if we could prove that you can have a parliamentary sitting online? And then
Mm,
we just launched, I think, and then in like 4 days, we created
yeah.
the website, we created the Google form, and then we launched it with zero money, with zero idea of whether, oops, sorry, I don't think it's me. Yeah, with zero idea of whether uh anybody would want to even join it. We were actually quite concerned that nobody wanted to join, but within 24 hours of launching, we had almost 2,000 registrations of interest, which includes
Mm,
applications to be a representative like you did,
yeah.
or to be a nomination to nominate someone, or to be an observer. So then we were like, oh, like wow, the response is quite crazy, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, and after like about a few weeks, no, after about 2 weeks, we decided to bring the deadline earlier because we realized that we have no capacity to read so many essays.
Okay.
And if you remember the essay that you had to write to
Yeah,
join,
yeah,
we were just
yeah.
like, actually, we cannot read so many essays, so let's bring it earlier. And we closed the applications with almost 6,200 registrations of interest. And
That's a
1,500
very
of that.
impressive number.
Yeah,
Very impressive
honestly,
number.
I was just very, very overwhelmed. The whole
Mm,
the whole process, left us feeling very overwhelmed as organizers, and we just felt like why is there such a huge um interest in this program? And maybe you can share a little bit of like why you wanted to join, but it's like I think for me, my guess and my theory is that there is that vacuum of a platform, that there's a vacuum of a space for a platform that genuinely provides opportunities to young Malaysians to speak up.
mm,
And I think many of these platforms that are existing currently um very much pushed by political parties.
mm.
There's of course there's vested interest, and it's not a bad
Yeah,
thing. Right? You
yeah,
can't blame political parties for engaging young people. That's what they're supposed to
yeah.
do. But I think for people who might just want to start off in politics, it can be quite scary to just jump in and like want to do and then straight away you'll be like, oh my god, I have to learn all this. So I
Yeah.
think the platform that we created is a much more holistic platform where people can sort of like dip their toes in it and like, okay, so this is what
Mm. I see,
like
I
civic
see.
MP is about, this is what parliamentary process is about. So I think that's something that I think the reason why we had such a big and overwhelming support from young people in Malaysia.
I see, I see. Oh, like what you said, being one of the participants for Parliament Digital, I saw how much impact and conversation the event has sparked.
Mm-hmm.
And Parliament Digital, I think it has definitely achieved what it set out to do. But having such a large event, like what you said, virtually with 222 youth representatives from over Malaysia,
Yeah,
it wasn't easy,
yeah.
definitely. In terms of coordinating recruitment, sponsorships, etc. So, what were some of the challenges that you and your team faced, and how did you guys overcome them?
Yeah. One of the challenges that we had, and I still think it's like a failure point for me was that the
Mm-hmm.
diversity makeup of the group. So by the time it was 1 month after applications, we had I think 2-3 thousand registration interest, but only 10% were female participants, and
I
almost
see.
none of it is like uh orang Kurang Upaya, orang
Mm-hmm.
asli, and then we had very low Sabah Sarawakian numbers. So we were quite like disappointed. I personally had a goal of 50% female representation. I was like,
Yeah,
we can do this. Like young women just apply. But
yeah,
then they didn't apply. So I was quite like stressed out, and then
yeah.
we realized that we had to really pivot the way we market things very quickly.
Mm,
From then on, all our marketing materials were featuring primarily young women. So
mm.
hopefully subconsciously it was like inspiring more young women to be like, oh, okay, like this is
Empowering.
a growing space for me.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
also intentionally called out, say, I am looking for more young women. I'm looking for
Mm,
more KU participants. I'm looking for more participants from Sabah and Sarawak. I think
yeah.
by showing that we are very genuine and very sincere in
Mm,
like prioritizing diversity, that
mm,
was, I think, a key reason why we managed to push a little bit higher the representation.
mm,
So
mhm.
we reached out to NGOs, and then we had NGOs recommend women. We had NGOs, who offered themselves as resources to sort of like say like, hey, if you need help, we can help you. Like, we
Mm,
train women politicians. We can train you as well. Don't have to be
yeah.
worried. And I personally also have so many girls, messaging me saying that they don't feel confident enough. And I'm just like, you think those boys think they ever have this opportunity? They don't. So you put yourself out there because,
Yeah.
and then one thing that I really like about that, when I asked YB Lim Yue to help me out, she put out a very interesting line. So she said,
Mm,
tiada penyertaan, tiada perwakilan. Without
mm,
participation, you can't get representation, which is so
yeah.
true, right? Like
Yes.
I speak to all these young women and I say that we always complain that there's not enough representation, but we're not stepping up to take that
Yeah.
space, right? Because this
Mm,
space, like Parliament Digital, where I, as an organizer, I'm intentionally saying I am creating this space for you. I think use this golden opportunity to take it and claim it as yours. And you can even see, because even when we did selection, we also prioritize meritocracy in terms of essay
Yeah.
quality, and we had 30% female representation, right? So
Yeah.
so clearly, but I don't think if we didn't push intentionally to get more women to apply, we might not get 30% women representation in the final lineup. And
I
thirty
see. I
percent
see.
sounds very little, right? Not even half.
Yeah.
But our real parliament is only about 15% women representation. So just like we try.
Yeah, but I totally agree with you. What you said about representation, especially from minority communities, minor communities. Otherwise, in Parliament, where where policies are made, it affects everyone, and sometimes you don't get to see issues that they are facing. So
Yeah.
representation is really, really important in spaces like the Parliament. So following up on that, you are part of several youth organizations, like what you said, Teach for Malaysia, Undi 18. So you would have worked with a lot of our nation's youth. So based on your observation, what is the level of political awareness among our youth today?
I think when we look at youth, there are two breakdown that you need to look at. So one is the adolescence years, which is like maybe 10 to 19 years old. And then one is like the sort of young adult age group of like below 30 years old. And until last year, below 40 years old was still considered youth, which
Yeah.
I personally do not agree with, right? So when you speak about these two different groups, right? When you look at students like below 19-year-olds, it's very challenging to sort of like make them understand the personal issues that can correlate with political um, situations. Okay, so example is that people always ask me, uh, why do we bother voting when politicians are so dramatic? They're so like they're so like everything and that very messy in the parliament hall, right? And then and what is the point of, as NGOs, should we even engage them? I think many of us who want to start out in this sector, firstly need to understand that all these laws that we want to change, all these policies you want to introduce, are all introduced in parliament. When you want to change the law, you want to introduce something, you have to get political will. And in a democracy like ours, political will is very important to change things. So that's why Undi 18, we started off as straight away as a bipartisan movement where we've made it very clear we wanted to engage both sides. So when it comes to political awareness, I mean, through the work that I do, right, and I speak to many young people, I think many of them, when you ask them what are the problems around you that you notice, they can name it very well. They can say like, oh, my school kipas rosak, cikgu tak masuk kelas, or certain things like saya tak mampu beli buku, tak mampu makan. So these are all technically, like policy issues, right, that kids can articulate. But when you ask them, okay, tapi ask them to sort of relate it to political in the political context, they're just like they jam. They cannot see the correlation. So I think our job as educators or as people in positions of like influence, including like small changes, is that can we constantly remind them that the personal is political, in the sense that everything you go through in your life is somewhat political, because if you want to change it, it's not, you can't just change things by yourself. And you want if you and because if you want to affect societal change, you need to sort of work with everyone, and that includes politicians. So I think young people, they're not like they don't know about politics,
Yeah.
because we so much of what we understand as politics are just like who is hopping over where, who is doing
Yeah.
traffic, things like that. But it's
Yeah.
not that, right? Politics
Yeah.
is also about like um did your
Policy
classmate manage to
making.
eat breakfast today?
Mm.
Did you did kids did this child manage to go to class today? Are you is a young Malaysian, who moved from Kelantan to KL, can they find a job that pays a decent minimum wage, a living wage? So these are issues that are consequences of political actions. So we need to know and understand how important it is to link those two together.
Yeah, that's really true. That's really true.
Mm.
So I'm following up on that. The youth have demonstrated willingness to take charge, bring change within our country through Parlimen Digital. But there is still a common sentiment among Malaysians that they are too young to understand about laws and policy making. Why do you think this still occurs, and how do we overcome them?
Sorry, can you repeat the first half again?
So the youth have demonstrated willingness like take charge, bring
Mm-hmm.
change within our community through Parlimen Digital. But there is
Mm-hmm.
still a common sentiment among Malaysians that they are too young to understand about laws and policy making. So why do you think this still occurs, and how can we overcome them?
I think it's a lot on how we as society see young people.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't have the mindset of expecting awesome things from them, how will they be able to have the expectations on themselves?
Mm,
You know, a lot of
yeah.
the reason why, I mean, like, when we grow up, personal experience, right? Like, I grew up uh, knowing that I must study hard, I need to go to university because I want to make my
Mm,
parents proud. Because there is the expectation on me to sort of like achieve more, to be better.
mm,
There's
mm.
that expectation, lah, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I think as society, and when you look at young people, and we need to expect that from them. We need to be okay.
Mm,
I have faith that this generation is not hopeless. I have faith that
mm,
this generation can become good politicians,
yeah.
that wants to graduate university and things like that. And we don't just brush them off because maybe they did something wrong. I think
Mm,
we sometimes are, as society, even
mhm,
sometimes I would reflect, right, when I look at my students and the younger kids I work with, is that, am I being too harsh on them? Like, what is you cross the line between education and like sort of like having mismanaged expectations, right? You're like, oh,
mm,
you need to realize at a certain point, are we demanding too much of young people? So
mm,
once we have a realistic expectations on young people, we can sort of like see their perspectives better. Because I
mhm,
think what many adults tend to do is that we dismiss young people's experiences as being very shallow or being
mm,
very frivolous. But
mm.
if we take in their experiences as lived experiences, it's something that we can have a better discourse on how can young people contribute in society, lah. Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
Basically, don't just treat. I mean, you can treat someone like a child if they're a child,
Yeah.
right? But if you want them to
Take them
be,
seriously.
yeah, you need to take them seriously if you want
Yeah.
to include their voices in society. And I think at
Mm,
this point, I mean, in Malaysia, we definitely don't. We don't.
mm.
We're not that not flexible, but empathetic with young
Yeah.
people. I think. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So
Mm-mm.
that's a very insightful answer to the question, because I think this is a question that a lot of us have at the back of our mind. So drawing the conversation back to our main topic tonight, to what extent do you think our youth is able to influence the policy-making landscape in Malaysia, and whether social media has a role to play in this?
Mm. I keep getting these questions lately. So I think social media plays a huge role in how I think young people process the world, not
Mm,
just activism and not just politics, but the world overall. I think
mhm,
sometimes even before we Google something, we look at our Instagram first. So
mm,
like it's like I think with social media, information is broken down much faster
mhm,
because it's created by your peers.
mm.
So what I mean by that is that you no longer just read Wikipedia pages to get educated, right? With social
Yeah,
media,
yeah,
I, as a young person, can create this can design this information for my friends, and they
yeah.
can read that and they can understand very easily what I'm
Mm,
trying to say, what I'm
mm,
trying to push for. And this
yeah.
closes the information gap very quickly and much quicker than even when I was a student growing up. Like I didn't have
Mhm.
social. I mean, we had Facebook and we had Friendster and all that, right? But
Yeah.
you never really use that as a way to learn
Raise
about,
awareness.
yeah, you don't really use it to learn about the world. And I
Mm,
think it's really inspiring how so many young people are trying to use social media to sort of like educate themselves and educate what's around them. Because you can clearly see this is an example of young people claiming the spaces that's available, right? Especially in the pandemic when you can't go out to museums, you can't go out anymore, you can't, you can't even go to school.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
other resources do you have to actually um, learn? And
Mm.
I think with social media, it's a very interesting because you can sort of like choose what you want to learn.
It's more
Like so like
personalized, curated.
yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
see.
So I want to learn more about like pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
There are Instagram accounts for that. I want to learn
Mm.
more about specifically one thing or another. There are Facebook or Twitter accounts for that. But
Mm.
of course, it's pros and cons, right? Because
Yeah,
it's very
yeah.
much unregulated. It can also feed into like misinformation. It feeds
Mm.
into fake news and things like that. But I personally, as someone who studied communications, I am leaning
Yeah.
towards like that it is more beneficial to have this freedom because I mean I have students who are like 15 years old talking to me about Black Lives Matter in the US.
Mm.
You have this sort of like knowledge that is so accessible to them that it's
Yeah.
quite it's I think and but again the struggle is how do you relate these issues to
Mm-hmm.
politics? I think that's
Mm.
the gap that we still haven't fixed yet.
Figure
Yeah.
it out. Yeah. Okay. I see. I see. Yeah. I think what you said about raising awareness through like Instagram, Twitter, has been really effective. I've seen like in recent years. Like for example, recently I saw the Loud Asians on Instagram.
Yes. Yeah. I don't
So
know who
yeah,
they
they've
are.
been.
I
Yeah,
don't
I don't know who they are. I'm not part of that.
know.
A free plug for them.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
and
So good.
they sort of they package everything like information into very aesthetically pleasing, very easy to digest in like very nicely packaged
Yep,
information
yep.
to like spread it out to people. So yeah, so definitely social media has a role to play in this. And I think a lot of people are also curious whether Parliament Digital will be a continuous event because I've also seen a lot of Parliament Digital alumni sharing the sentiment to continue this effort because I think a lot of us agree that it has brought a lot of impact, empowered a lot of Malaysian youth. So, are there any future plans for Parliament Digital? And if yes, can you share about them?
So first, I mean, thanks so much for saying that it's made a huge impact. I think, it's honestly, I think we didn't expect that it would be so meaningful to so many Malaysians. That we've met through this program, either within Parliament Digital or even as an observer, or even as a if you attended any of the Academy Parliament Digital workshops, which is on a much smaller scale.
Mm,
But when we deep dive into specific skills and all that, um, I can't say for sure 100% whether there will be another Parliament Digital.
mm,
Because, in my opinion, what made Parliament Digital unique was that it was a reaction to current issues. It
mm,
was something that was necessary at that time
mm,
because it was chaotic and it was everyone had so many questions about for our politicians and there was no platform to voice that out. And
mm,
through Parliament Digital, you have that platform to get the attention of politicians and lawmakers to take young people seriously. Um,
mm.
so for me, I don't think we should continue a program just for the sake of continuing it, right?
Yeah.
Because I personally believe that what makes Parliament Digital meaningful is not just the format or structure of Parliament Digital, but
Mm.
it's who designed it and how we designed it, and also the
And
participants
why we
exactly,
designed it.
and also who joins them, right?
Yeah.
So I believe that there's so much space to innovate uh, how we look at youth empowerment in Malaysia. And I think
Mhm.
Uni 18 is a lot more focused on doing that. I want to keep
Mm,
a lot more cool new things. I want to keep creating and innovating and pushing the boundaries of youth empowerment that we've never pushed before, right?
mm,
So if you can create something as cool as Parliament Digital again next year, that
yeah.
will be awesome, right? But the question is, can we create something cooler, or can we create
Mm,
something different that is still as inclusive, that is still as diverse, and that is still as sort of
meaningful.
bipartisan, and meaningful for Malaysian young people, so that they will want to join it, not because of the prestige or whatever, but because they genuinely want to learn and genuinely want to be part of something um, patriotic. So that's my
Mm,
opinion. So if you
mm,
can see, that's why only 18 we don't do in a way flagship programs.
mm,
Because I think Tarma and I were the kind of people that's always like, what crazy new things can we do this time?
yeah.
So we have that sort of attitude in the work that we do. So you see, we run many different campaigns like Undi Sarawak, Undi Sabah.
Yes.
Undi
Yes.
Sabah again is a reaction to what's happening in Sabah right now. So we were like thinking, okay, how can we do something about this? Let's do
Mm,
Undi Sabah, you know. So we got
mm,
like 15 young Sabahan to join the team, and now they're
mm,
I think from next week onwards, you'll be able to see really awesome Sabahan content about the elections that's happening next month.
mm,
Also have our other campaigns where like the 111 initiative, where we're pushing for 50% female participation. We have Senate 18, lowering the age to become a senator. We have Uni Saksama, which is pushing for local government elections. And we
oh,
also
okay.
have Pakistan, which is trying to institutionalize forest conservation through through EFT, so environmental fiscal transfer, meaning
Mm,
that we're getting the government to prioritize conserving our forests, because it is not a
yeah.
priority right now. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, so 2018 is we're very open in a sense of how we want to do our programs, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to focus on how do we create platforms for young people to talk about policies before they go into politics, right?
Mm,
People to go into politics for the glamour or for
yeah.
the prestige of it, but
Mm,
it's because you were very passionate about one issue. For example, the environment, or
mm,
equality, or
mm,
improving democratic processes. So
mm,
I I I, I want to be able to, maybe 10 years from now, look at our parliament and say, oh, at least one third of them have been in the OD18 program.
yeah.
That is such a
Yeah.
cool thing to be able to sort of like influence society overall. Yeah.
Mm,
I'm
I
not gonna
see.
say
I
that
see.
I'm gonna do it again,
Yeah.
but you never know. You
Yeah.
never know. Like as for ODAP, we're in the business of like just trying to disrupt how we do things in Malaysia. So
Mm.
we'll see what happens next lah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. That's cool. So that was a very insightful sharing from you, Kira. But before we wrap this session up, let's open the floor to questions from the audience. I have the first one here is from Azri. Azri asks, how do we effectively channel youth enthusiasms or ideals into something more concrete?
Is this Azri Malik?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Hi, Azri. I think as people in positions of educators, right? I'm assuming it's asking from the perspective of, like, say, I'm working with students and youth. How do I channel them something concrete? I think one of the most valuable thing that we can provide them is exposure.
Mm,
So one of the goals that we try to achieve is that, can we expose young Malaysians to policy making processes as much as possible. So for
mm,
Parlimen Digital, right, all of you either virtually or physically have met so many politicians. You met
yeah.
ministers. You all have met more MPs than I have met, to be honest, at this point. You've met ministers that I haven't met before. So when you can be exposed to these individuals, or these uh, environment at a much earlier age, you're able to sort of like realize it, that it's not so distant for you.
Mm,
I think,
nice.
especially young people, and even, especially for young women, right? If you don't see a role model, if you don't see examples of representation up there, you feel like it's something that's impossible to
Mm,
achieve, right?
mm,
But if
mm,
at a very young age, you're in school and then you've been to parliament, you've seen them debate, you
mm. Yeah.
see politicians as normal, flawed human beings,
Mm,
you realize that they're not the most perfect people. And
yeah.
actually, they could be my parents, they could be me, they could be
Mm,
my teacher. I think it makes it, you can sort of bring the enthusiasm to action quite
I
easily,
see.
because you're
I
able
see.
to showcase them that uh, societal change, or or your perjuangan or your causes is actually doable. There's actually a realistic end goal for
Yeah.
that. And
It's not actually something that's too far away.
exactly, correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, correct. I
that's
mean,
good.
it's something a bit like if you're studying and then you put a picture of Disney World in front of you, and every day you look at it and it's like, one day I'm going to Disney World. And then you save up and then you work hard towards it because it's a tangible goal that you have in front of you.
Mm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that exposure is very, very important, and I believe educators should prioritize creating the experience for their students. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because I think once you're exposed to all these experiences, like what you said, it's not
Mm.
something that's impossible. And I think something that youth have may struggle with this is that we tend to think that what can we do as one person for the entire country? So it's like did aid. So it's like I can't really do anything as one person. Might as well not do it. So I think yeah, what you said it's really true and really important to like give them exposure and all that. And a second question from Azri also. This also ties back to a previous this subtopic that we were talking about is why should the youth be given a voice in national discourse when they are still wet behind the ears and unable to understand the realities on the ground? Most are still not working and don't even earn their own income, i.e., getting money from parents. Hence, how are they able to understand bread and butter issues?
Yeah. So I think when we talk about so there's basically three things I would address in this question. One is
Mm,
that lived experiences are still experiences. So just because you don't have a formal job, it doesn't mean that you don't have ideas or experience that you want to raise up in the policy making process. So, I mean, not all of our parliamentarians have a degree. Not all our
mm,
parliamentarians have worked in the corporate sector,
mm,
and even to be a voter you don't have to take an exam to be a voter, right? But for me, most importantly, when you want to become an MP or a state representative, is that you have the concerns of your community at your heart. So
mm,
this is something that you can achieve by being proactive in your community, becoming a community leader, and that's something that's not sort of like hindered by your age. It's more about whether you are proactive about it or not.
mm.
um and then secondly, I think oh no, I forgot. But it ties into what I was saying in the first point now. But
Yeah.
basically, the idea is that we assume that young people do not have the experiences because they don't pay taxes,
Mm.
but we do pay SST, for example. We do suffer the consequences of
Consequences.
policies.
Yeah.
Just because someone doesn't pay tax, actually, how many of Malaysia pays taxes? Our fresh graduates get paid so little, right? I
Mm.
know people who are almost 30 years old earning less than 3,000, which means they don't pay income
Oh,
tax
okay.
either. Does that mean they don't get
Oh,
a say or they don't get to contribute? It's quite a
mm.
reductive perspective to have, to just assume someone don't deserve to have a say in our democracy
Yeah,
because they are not seen as productive member of society, right?
I see.
So it's really about how we view young people and how we view citizens' roles in our
Mm.
democracy. And
Mm.
the last point is that, this is why I also agree that if the moment you start politics, you straight away become under the MP. I think that's a bit challenging, and it's not something that how some people say you hit the ground running. I think it's like you hit
Yeah.
the ground flying really, because like for example, like not everyone is like YB Syed Sadiq,
Yeah.
where he has amazing support system. The moment he wants to become MP, he has like a group of people. He has a mentor like Tun Mahathir who can guide him and help him. How many young people have that privilege, right?
Yeah. And
And
it can be intimidating as well.
exactly, right? It's like, oh, okay, Sadiq is great, but he has Tun M to help him. What do I have, right? Like my
Yeah.
Instagram followers, that's not enough. So I think this is why we need to relook at how we participate in a democracy overall, which is why Undi 18, through our campaign, Undi Saksama, is trying to push for local government elections. I think
Mm.
having returning local government elections in Malaysia is a great way for young people to test out becoming politicians, because you have to run first in your town, right? You need to run elections, campaign, you need to go door to door. You need to understand the grassroots problems, bread and butter
Yeah.
issues, for you to even represent your zone in your Majlis Bandar Raya. You know,
Mm.
once you have that basics and the experience, and in a way you've proven that, okay, I know the issues of the rakyat, I've been there, then you can go and run for state representative, then you can go and run for MPs, then you can make a good ministers. For so many years in Malaysia, many of our politicians are like, you are fielded and then you terus run for state or MP. Tapi uh but you know lah, but you know, it's like we don't have local government elections, so we don't have the opportunity, that sort of like launch pad for young people to become active in politics, and they don't get a chance. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a very, very detailed answer from you, Kira. So I think we can move
Yeah.
on to the
I'm
third
ready. Ask
question.
me.
We have a question from Daryl. So he said, when we speak about youth, youth also comprise of school students, especially secondary students, like
Mm.
pre-U students. So how do you prepare them to have the mindset to vote and know that their votes play a vital role in the upcoming GE, seeing things that happen in Malaysia lately?
So hi Daryl. I used to liaise with Daryl when I was working Teach for Malaysia. So I think that's a great question. And I like that you pointed out that, you know, youth comprise of different sectors. You know, like I mentioned earlier, there's the different age group. Beyond different age group, there's also youth that comes from different communities, like rural youth, urban youth, um, youth who are persons with disabilities, youth who are orang asli, orang asal. So these are all different communities. And when it comes to voting and participating in elections, they all have different priorities, right? Some people want to have better economic support. Some people want to focus a lot on issues on human rights and all that. So I think it's first before and I like that, you know, before we think of young people as voters, we need to first understand that they are not all the same, right? Not every young person is like, we are not a demographic that you should just generalize like that. Okay, young
Yeah,
people think this, young people think that. It's
yeah.
not like that. It doesn't
Put
work
them in
like
the
that.
box. Yeah.
Yeah. So that way, confirm you will lose the election.
Mm.
So I think so for us, people who work with young people, um, we, and I think this is something that I mentioned before as well, is that if we are actively working with young people, we are in a huge and unique position to influence the way they make decisions. You know, these are
Mm.
teachers, parents, educators, even you guys as small changes, since you work with kids, right?
Mm.
Is that you're able to help them link what they're studying to what's happening out there in the real world. And I think that it's a privilege, because not even politicians are able to have that opportunity to mold young minds. So it's
Mm.
very important for teachers to think about, how do you tie in whatever you teach in class or whatever you teach in school to real life consequences. I think that was something that I feel I didn't get to experience a lot when I was in school. And
Mm.
many times I just thought that, what's the point of studying this, because I don't see the value of it.
Mm.
I mean, of course, now you realize that it's damn useful lah. So luckily, you know, I studied a little bit. But I think many students struggle to understand why is it important to care about what's happening out there, and we
Mm.
need to emphasize on them, like, you know, whatever decisions we make, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's at home or whether it's outside, you know, whether deciding to quit school and work is also a huge decision that young people make sometimes, and it has
Mm.
consequences on themselves and the community. And that's what voting is about. That
Mm.
whatever you do in the ballot, for the ballot box,
Yeah.
has a consequence either on yourself or within the community. So I
Mm.
think emphasizing that point is extremely important. Yeah.
I see, I see. I think we have one last question from Ayman Shakir. He also commented that very insightful session. So the question is, we've witnessed the youth movement all over the world led by Greta Thunberg on the issue of sustainability and climate crisis. Do you see such issue being raised enough or sufficiently in Parliament Digital?
So I mean, I think Agent, you can also answer this a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
as the process of Parliament Digital, we synthesize all the participants' suggestions into 8 different themes. Some of these
Mm.
themes are overlapping for
Yeah.
sure, but some of them are quite different, like economy and
Mm.
then environment.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, environment became the lowest voted choice of topic for Parlimen Digital. So
Mm-hmm.
it led to many people in public to just immediately say, oh, young people don't care about environment.
Yeah,
Again, don't generalize young people like that.
exactly.
It's not even a representative survey done. It's just
Yeah,
200 people ticking what do they want to talk about on the day itself.
yeah,
So I think uh, in the context of Parlimen Digital, it was a lot about it was a lot emphasis on responding to the pandemic.
mm,
And for majority of the makeup of Parlimen Digital are students who are still in school, students
yes,
who are still in university, who all immediately overnight had to transition from going to class to online lessons. So
mm,
I think because of that, and also many of them are young professionals who either got laid off or having financial troubles. So I think because of that situation, topics like the environment would be deprioritized because many young people are trying to struggle to think about how to survive the next day
yeah,
and the next day.
mm,
But I definitely disagree with that idea that it means that environment is not important. It was important enough that
yeah.
it's mentioned enough that we had to clump it into a cluster.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
And I mean, Ijin, you were there in all the discussions that you've had with
Yeah,
multiple groups. There were also groups discussing about the environment, and there were people
exactly.
pushing for
Yeah,
to vote for environmental issues
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, right. So
And also, we had
unfortunately,
limited time to discuss
exactly,
so
yeah. To
many
be fair, you
issues.
had 24 hours to decide. So
Yeah,
it's a huge frenzy of people lobbying each other, people trying to encourage everyone to sort of like choose a topic that favors them.
yeah,
So I think it's very difficult to form a judgment just based on one event.
yeah.
But also interesting, I think that I think as ODAT we want to show people that um, even if you're speaking about one topic in particular, can you tie it to a different topic that's more popular so that more people
Mm,
are able to sort of like relate to it? So, for example, the
yeah,
campaign that we do called My Hutan, we
mm,
are trying to institutionalize forest conservation, meaning that we want to
mm,
change the constitution to force the government to allocate funding every year to the states
mm,
to conserve the forest because currently states have no incentive to conserve their forests. Whenever they don't have money, they might want to sell forest land because that's how they can
mm,
generate revenue very easily. So what if the
mm,
government incentivize the states to not sell their land by compensating them with money? And this is an economic
mm,
decision, right? It's part of the constitution. It will be part of national budget. So it's not just a green policy. So I think with
mm,
that, with that said, that you can this is how you can convince people who may not see the value of environmental causes from the beginning to actually say, oh, actually, you can solve this with with being creative and being resourceful.
yeah.
So I think that's the main um, that's I think that's a better way of trying to advocate for certain causes that generally don't get much attention. And environment, admittedly, is one of them. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I see, I see. Yeah. So to answer Iman's question, there are youth in Malaysia who are passionate about issues, sustainability, and climate crisis, and this is very evident from the behind the scenes of Parliament Digital, where people were like pushing for people to like vote that we should talk about these issues during the 2 day Parliament Digital. So yeah, like what Kira said, there are youth who are passionate about different issues in Malaysia, and it's time that we recognize them, recognize their voices, and give them a platform to talk about the experiences, issues that they're facing, and things that they are passionate about. So I think we have come to the end of the third Friday session today, and I just want to say thank you to Kira.
Thank you,
Thank
Adrian.
you for sparing the time. I know you're really busy. You have a lot of projects going on, and so thank you, really, a big thank you for spending the time here with Small Changes today. I'm sure the audience, including me, myself, we've learned a lot from you today, and we hope to have you on Small Changes again in the future, or possibly like who knows, collaboration.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I collaborated with Small Changes when I was in TFM. I mean, there
Mm,
was the days when Daryl was leading it. So
Yeah.
that was TFM. So if there's an opportunity to collaborate with Undi 18, more than happy to, of course. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Qyira, again. And good night, everyone.